multi-joint because you're working this one, but you're only working these. So if you sit down and do exercises, you're limiting yourself. So you want to do exercises that involve multiple joints because A, you're going to get more out of it because when you walk and when you turn, it's all multiple joints, okay? So the more you train like your body is built to do, the better results you're going to get out of it. You'll also get core exercises out of it too. This is why we always recommend, say you go to the gym or have a gym at home, to do other variations outside of machines. Because machines, if I sit there and I'm doing curls, since I'm sitting, I shut my pelvic floor off. And when I lock this in, I'm only working my bicep. Well, when I stand up, I don't walk like that, right? So if I switch it and do a dumbbell curl, standing here makes me have to turn my pelvic floor on, my core. So you're actually getting more, what we call bang for your buck type exercises. Okay? So when you're picking exercises, think multiple joints. It doesn't always have to be, but have some form of variations in your program when you're talking about these things. Any questions on that? Yes.
Are all of these exercises and stretches like, because I noticed that there was different postures, the picture of the I feel like personally I have issues with sitting in a desk. My neck kind of falls back and I slouch. So are all these, I guess, stretches and exercises meant to help kind of correct that, or?
Yes. So when you work the rib cage and you get to move more effectively and efficiently, so your scapula and your shoulder blade lives on your rib cage. So if your rib cage moves a little bit better, it's going to position your body in a better position. And that's a good question because since everyone's different, one thing I like about what you asked was if you sit a lot, maybe when in your programs, you might want not necessarily do as many exercises where you sit, right? So if you sit for 8 hours, then you go to the gym and do exercises where you sit and do exercises, you're reinforcing that sitting pattern, right? So maybe doing all standing exercises for the days that you sit. And you can program it differently. Say it's the weekend you didn't work, you're like, I want to do some seated exercises. So it's not like stay away from them, but I also tell people, look at what they did for the day. If I sat a lot, we'll have people do all their exercises standing, right? Or we'll do a little bit more standing. It's not like you have to do all of them standing. But yes, working the rib cage, getting these stretches is actually going to help do that. So what they've seen is when you work one region, it's usually going to change another because we talked about the whole body works together. They did studies where they looked at cadavers and saw fascial tissue over the connective tissue that connects to the bottom of your big toe, and it wraps all the way around your back and all the way to the top of your forehead. So what they did was they pulled on the fascial at the thing and it changed what happened at the other places. So what it showed is your body's so interconnected that if we work on one region, so if I get my ribs to move better, the pelvis is like, oh, awesome, because your abdominals work there. Those are going to pull in a better position. It could tilt your pelvis in a better position. So they're all interplayed together. So yes, absolutely. And then program options. Once again, everyone's different. Before we get to this, the first thing I like is the RPE scale. This is the original one. We do like a 1 to 10, 10 being the most exertion ever. I feel like I'm going to pass out. 1 being, okay, I didn't do anything. This is a one that's been around 6 to 20. We like to tell people when you're doing you're programming your workouts, your posture exercises, whatever you're doing, that you kind of do it based on feel. Right? So there's going to be a day you go work out or just do these things and you're going to feel phenomenal. I feel it everywhere, you know. And then all of a sudden you got 4 hours of sleep the next day. And you go to do them, you're like, you know what? I've lost all feeling. Maybe it's better to take a day off, right? How you feel is going to really help kind of dictate what you should do that day. Or maybe you do a little less. Maybe you had, you worked a lot that day and it's like, you know what? I just don't feel everything I need to, or I'm just tired. Remember, a lot of stuff when you're working out is neurologically based. So if you're tired, that's going to slow down these messengers to your muscles. So if you're sitting there working and you're just like, oh, the weight's low, or I just can't feel this, it may be better just to drink some water, hydrate, and get a better night's sleep, and then do it the next day. Okay? So kind of doing these things, you do it based on you feel. And each day you don't have to feel the same. You could have a day where it's like, man, this is awesome. I got everything done. The next day it's like, it's all right. And then the next day where it's like, I don't like this, I'm too tired. I call it quits. So you don't always have to feel great every time you do this. So I like to tell people, how do you feel that day? Judge it based on that. And you can always change the reps and sets too. You don't need to do the same amount of sets each time. Okay, this is just an example we had where first, say this was a Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We're just going to leave it at that. You know, everyone's going to do it differently, but Monday, you know, we had where the person, we had them start at level 1, and we did this for a couple weeks. They just did 2 sets of 3 to 4 reps. That could be breaths, that can be whatever it is. And this is, we'll say we had them on that program. We had the breathing, this and that, okay? They did 3 to 4 reps, and they were done for the day. That's all they did. Day 2, after 2 weeks, we started at level 2, and then we had them do, all we did was add 1 more set. We kept the reps the same, but we added 1 set. So when you're looking at your workout programs and stuff like that, you don't always have to change everything. You don't have to change the exercise. Sometimes it's just changing how many sets you do, how many repetitions you do, right? So you don't want to necessarily change everything. And then level 3, all we did was 4, so we did both sets and reps. And then this was over time, okay? And like I said, we've had this person get to level 3 and then shift back to level 1 because they just had a rough week. It had no big deal. The big key with this is after we get them to feel this, is this part here, consistency. It doesn't matter how many sets and reps you do, it's just you need to keep doing it. Where people get away from it is they'll go great for 2 to 3 weeks, and then something happens, they're like, well, I only have 5 minutes or 10 minutes to work out, I'm just not going to do anything. It'd be better to get down and, just work on the breathing for 5 minutes, because remember, that subconscious, going back to that 95% of what your body's doing, you're reprogramming, you're retraining to get better at it. So the more you do it, the more it's going to kind of lock everything in. Now, if you're like, oh, I only have 10 minutes, I'll wait till tomorrow. Something comes up, you wait, and all of a sudden you haven't done anything for 2 weeks. It changes and it's going to kind of revert back. So whatever you do, we always recommend doing something is always better than doing nothing. 5 minutes of work is better than, because everyone's lives are different. Every week's going to be different, right? So you're never going to be on the same schedule. You're not going to feel the same. So you got to kind of just be like, you know what? Be happy with doing something, because in the long run, this is a journey, right? So it's going to take time, whatever you do. And then going back, just volume options like we talked about. A Monday, the person, you do like 2 sets of 5. Wednesday, you do 3 sets of 4. And then Friday, you do 4 sets of 3. So what I like about this gives variations. So if you're like, man, I don't want to do the same thing over and over again, you can do variations. There's exercises have many forms. So bird dogs, so for instance, you're like, man, I'm tired of doing bird dogs. I want something that does the same but differently. We'd have them do dead bugs. Very same thing. You lay on your back, you push your back down, knees up, and it's just opposites. Okay? Right there. Same exercise, in a sense, works the same things, it's just different. So when you're looking at exercises and what you're doing, just look at, hey, do these work the same things? And a lot of times there's going to be some form of that. And they don't always have to be the same thing. There's just another key with variation is try to stick with exercises for a few weeks before you change it. Because remember, the body and brain have to get used to it. So if you switch too soon, so we've worked with people that their program, the only thing they needed to change was that a different variation or different exercise in every workout. So every workout was different, which was great, but it was hard for them to kind of get their body used to it. So all we did was, hey, let's make that just different we call this undulating, where we'll just change the reps, or maybe you change, and then they actually saw their improvements, because it wasn't the exercises, it was too sporadic for their body to kind of connect and lock these in, okay? Perfect time. And thank you guys for having me come, and CFRI for this. This is, love to be here, and thanks for spending your time talking to me. If there's any questions too, and here's the things if people want to take pictures of. A lot of free content, we're updating stuff like that. Like I said, I started the Cystic Fibrosis Fitness Institute a few years ago. I finally got a facility about 6 months ago. We do a lot of online training. One of our goals is to try and help as many people out as we can. So we do a lot of online content where we shoot exercises, mini workouts, breathing exercises. Research and science is always advancing, so we're trying to keep on providing these things. We also do research projects, so we send out on our channels, hey, we're looking for 15 people that want to improve rib mechanics. If you're interested, send us an email. So all this stuff, and have other questions, you walk away like, oh, I wanted a question like this. Our email's there, our blog, our Facebook, our Instagram, and our YouTube. If you have any questions, you don't hesitate to send me an email. We'll get back to you as soon as possible, and we can set up a time to chat if you want. Any questions outside of there? Yeah.
This is just about the breathing. Have you ever heard from other CF patients like that the gut gets in the way? For example, there's like a lot going on here.
Right.
And when I sort of tuck in my chest and try to breathe, and I don't know what it's like for normal people, like there's a lot of volume.
Yeah, yeah, good question. We've had that happen.
What's the solution to that?
It's variations. Just work with the breath. You know, you can do this standing too. Maybe seated is not stand. You know, say for instance you want to try this standing. The way we do it is get your feet about hip width apart, bend your knees a tad, not like to the point where you're over your toes, right? But you still want to feel the ground, and then take your pelvis and kind of tuck it down a little bit. And then you tuck your rib cage a little bit there, and you guys can work on breath. And we have multiple variations of breathing exercises on the site. So we have standing, breathing, and different things. So this is still a position. Once again, in this position, I'm working on my rib cage. So if you look at this, you're like, that's not the best posture to walk. Totally understandable. I'm not going to walk like this, right? But I'm trying to focus on the rib cage expansion. So I'm doing that. So then eventually when I go to walk, my ribs are moving well. So you'll look at these things and say, well, that doesn't look like an optimal posture. I was like, well, you go back to the various postures. We want to be able to move in all postures. And sometimes you'll see exercises where like, that person's back is so rounded. Like, why do they have them doing it? It's like, there's a particular reason. It's like, hey, we're working rib cage expansion, so we're trying to really go to in ranges here on certain things. But maybe possibly a standing one would help with that. And then also just variations of the breath. Get in as much, like, you know what, I get a little discomfort there, so I'm going to pull back a little bit. Because that's another thing too. Say you do one of these exercises and you're breathing and you have like pain, like a sharp pain. That's kind of a red line. Say, hey, listen, maybe don't go that far, because sharp pain, the brain's going to listen to that more than it's going to listen to working on the respiration. So you're going to feel the pain. The brain's going to send signals to the pain receptors over there while you're trying to work on breathing. So kind of go on feel if you're not, if you feel something, and vary your breaths. In the beginning, when we start with this, a lot of people will have short, choppy breaths, and it's going to be hard. But that's just some restrictions and stuff. So over time, there'll be a little bit more fluid and stuff like that. And one day you could be phenomenal, and the next day it could just suck. It's like, it really depends on a lot. So we always tell people to just keep working with it, because sometimes they hit a gate, like they hit a wall, then all of a sudden three sessions down the road, the floodgates open. It's like, ah. So it depends on how much the body's been restricted. But yeah, maybe it's standing variation. Yes.
So I cycle a lot, and when I'm on my bike, my posture is curved. And I know you said that some sports, you change your posture, and that's normal. Is it normal to have a curved posture whenever you're cycling? Do you know?
So when you're cycling, yeah, right, you're trying to get in the best posture to cycle. Yeah, and that's a good point. Your environment's going to dictate what you're trying to accomplish, right? So when we have people with cycling, we'll do breathing exercises standing, right? So I played baseball. So in order to be I was a pitcher and I'm short. So in order to do that, I got to be better, okay? So what I had to do for a long time is overhead athletes, what they do is they have to get their arm back. So if I'm tucked here, this is all I have for my arm. Well, I need more because I need to turn over my hand. So I do this. So you'll see a lot of football players, baseball players, big chest like this, and it's because of their sport. So in your sport, phenomenal. You don't want to change like your structure, because there's a reason why you're cycling. Like now, when you get out, like when you're done cycling, the standing up, getting the ribs, because when you're down here, same thing, you're still be restricted, right? So working on that outside of there, because we've had people where we don't want to change what you do in your sport. When you're done with your sport, when you walk away from the bike that day, we want your body to go to the other side of the continuum, loosen back up. Because a lot of times if we do it for too long, just like anything else, you'll stay restricted, maybe not as much as you think, and then you'll get off and do other things, and you have limited stress. So it's like when you get off is a key one, and maybe before working on it, it could help with your breathing during. That's what we've had people with sports work on it before, and like, man, I feel like you have a little bit more energy and stuff just because they've been able to transfer the oxygen a little bit better. Good question.
There was one problem I was wondering if you've noticed is consistent throughout the CF community, and that is for a time I was underweight, and it made it very difficult to sit on things for long periods of time because it didn't have a lot of cushion. and that really altered the way that I would hold myself. I tried to put my weight on my thighs and stuff. I was wondering if there were a certain set of problems that would come with that, or if that was something in the CF community, or
Problems in that posture or just
in posture, and how, because I'm always trying to lean to one
Lean to-
side
yeah.
because I don't want to sit flat.
Right, yeah, so staying in those positions a lot. So if you're gonna, so for instance, say, I'm gonna try and mimic, I'm sitting there and I'm gonna lean more to get more of my quads and stuff like that. So your body, it's not gonna wanna fall, right? So if I'm gonna go and I'm gonna lean more towards my toes, if I'm gonna fall, what my body and brain's gonna do is gonna drive my chest up like this. Oh, now you're balanced, and then you walk, so it's not gonna fall over. So what can happen is lower back can get tight because it cranks on your lower back muscles. So ideally what you're trying to accomplish is, trying to keep your feet as grounded as possible in the middle, right? Because if I'm too far on my toes here, I can start to develop knee pain because there's a lot of stress. If I'm too far on my heels here, my body's gonna fall back. That's why finding the middle of your foot, right? And then just working on breathing, and then honestly standing up and moving around is key. We people that have desk jobs a lot, we try and get them every hour to just stand up for a second, do maybe a quick stretch or something, sit back down. But yeah, that can lead to the discomfort that you're talking about, and it's gonna move things around.
I've just noticed that I try and sit back on my computer, but I often find myself leaning way forward like this, and I'm like, I've pushed myself away a lot,
Right.
and I'm always sitting like that.
Yeah, and welcome to your subconscious, right? It's crazy because you'll be like, hey, I'm in a good posture, and all of a sudden, 5 minutes later, you're like this or like this. I see it. Like when you go to lay down on your couch, see what side you lay on. And a lot of times you're going to lay on one side versus the other, and then you go to lay on the other side, and you'll be there for like 10 seconds, you're like, oh, this is all right. And then all of a sudden, you're like, I don't feel different. And all of a sudden, 5 minutes later, you're back to the other side. So that's kind of crazy about the body. It creates these things. So one thing to work on there is just getting the rib cage down a little bit, putting maybe where your pelvis is at, tucking it just a tad, because a lot of times, like I said, when we sit, these muscles get tight, and these muscles tilt your pelvis forward, and it's going to make you, like we talked about, do this. So realigning that, the structure of your pelvis and stuff like that, that could help as well. And just doing that periodically throughout the day, and it's hard because you're not going to think about it, but it's one of the things is you'll do it for a second and you'll revert back. No posture is a bad posture we talk about. It's just staying in one posture for too long starts to create these what we call compensatory. One side gets tighter than the other. So we always start to tell people try and use the other arm when you're doing stuff. It's hard. If you're going to go grab stuff with me, I use my right arm a lot. So I try to open doors with my left, or I try to, grab something with my left, hold groceries with the opposite side. Holding stuff on the opposite side, I tend to groceries on the right. So all of a sudden, groceries on the right, I'm going to do this. All these muscles getting tight. So when I started using it on the left, it felt weird, and you're always going to subconsciously go to the right place, but if you remember, start using the other arm for stuff, that can help in more of the functional things, or you're not trying to do it as a conscious thing.
I had a question.
Yeah.
And it's in regards to like exercising and your heart rate, other than like purslipping, like breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. Is there a particular position to help pretty much decrease your heart rate when exercising, as far as like your rib cage, your pelvic area?
Is this like during, after, or are you talking like to help improve heart rate over time, or?
As far as like with exerting,
Yeah.
exerting myself, my heart rate shoots up. So in between sets, I have to essentially take a break just to bounce back.
Right.
Is there a particular position that would help me catch my breath faster, other than me the way I'm breathing?
Yes. So once again, it all depends, right? Haven't taken you through assessment, so I can't clearly say, well, if you're in this position, right? Remember when people used to say, put your hands over your head and stuff like that? It's like, that's the best way to get air in. Well, they're starting to figure out, like, remember we had used to put hands down here, right? And it's like your body just goes to this. The question is why? Well, when my hands are overhead, I'm lengthening my abdominals and I'm tilting my pelvis. So internally, when I put my hands here more, obviously you don't have to be like this. Yeah. This actually contracts that and puts in a better position to clear it out. So hands on your, like this position is better than when people walk with their hands over their heads, because you're cranked into extension. But over time, when we're in PE and stuff, like they said, hands on your head, hands on your head. And then we realized, but subconsciously when you're tired, you don't even think about that, you do this. Because the brain's like, hey, I need air in, and I need to transfer all this. So my best position is get this, because I want my abdominals to work, I want that. So ideally, when you're in this position, I honestly just tell people, because it's hard. You don't want to have to think about everything you do, right? And this is the thing. We're not going to be like, okay, all day I'm going to have to think about where my rib cage is at. Like, no. Just because then people are like, you know what? I'm not going to do this. Like, I don't want, because then it gets tiring. So when you're in those situations, I just tell people to work on breathing. If rib cage is up or it's down, I always just like, just take some nice, big, deep breaths. The best way to bring the heart rate down is working on breath. And and the thing with these exercises, so when we're working the rib cage and stuff like that, that's like doing its own workout. So if you have an elevated heart rate and you're doing that exercise, it still may be too much. So what we do is more of like the yoga, just breathe. Because getting that air in is going to dial you down. So I always tell people just get some good breaths in, maybe walk around a little bit, but you can even just stand there and that helps really down-regulate. Absolutely. And that's why when you do these breathing exercises, they're going to tax you. You're going to heat up a little bit. It's neurologically taxing. So this may not be a good exercise to do in between sets of something. I like to tell people put these during their warm-ups because it actually helps. You want to get to the point where, hey, I'm loose muscle-wise, but I also want my respiratory system to get as much air in as I can. So these are great exercises for warm-ups. When people are we have people that can't sleep as well or in those positions, with cool downs, we like to just tell people, so we'll have them do a rib exercise, to warm them up. And then on cool downs, it could be at the bench or you can do this at home. Like I said, if you're working out at home or if you're at the gym, sometimes you're not going to want to lay on the ground depending on the gym you go to, right? And I put my feet here, tuck my pelvis back, close your eyes. I go palms up because palms down tightens your chest muscle, which we don't want. Close your eyes and just breathe. 1 minute, 2 minutes, and you don't have to work on rib cage. Because there's times where we want to work on these exercises to get you out of that sympathetically driven state, right? The one where you're like wired, all right, let's go, let's go, let's go. Breathing is going to help bring you to the parasympathetic state and allow you to do other stuff. Because we talk about if you're sympathetically driven, if you're me in college where I was cranked up, energy drinks, ready to go in a baseball game, I'm ready to go, like I can run through a wall. Well, I didn't get used to resting. So I started to hurt my lower back and my shoulder because I lived in that sympathetic state. So just getting to the sympathetic state could help allow everything to happen. And if you do some form of rib work or breathing work to help your posture, when you get back to the sympathetic state, a lot of times they'll shift you back to that better posture. So some postures are determined based on how are you. If you drank a lot of coffee today, you're going to be a little bit more wired. Like went to Phil's today and I'm wired and I'm here, so when I go home today, I need to work on my breathing, else I'm going to wake up tomorrow with a lower back stiff, because it happens to all of us. So I don't live here, so I saw Phil's, and I was like, I need Phil's.
Can you comment on the neck? Like, just in terms of how we consciously can relax the neck, or is it all about putting your rib cage down and it will automatically happen?
That's a good question. So about the neck. So one thing we like to talk to people about, like, they're all interconnected. So maybe you need to do neck work, maybe it's rib work you need to do. We always talk about when doing exercises, just like if you can kind of tuck it down a little bit and back. It's like almost I'm making a double chin, not like aggressively like this, but just down and back. The crazy thing about like the neck and the brain and stuff like that, you're going to look straight ahead and you can see. So when you're trying to go in one position, that's what's so cool about our body is, okay, I need to go there. But if I've been sitting a lot and I've been hanging out here clicking on a mouse, when I get up, my head, it's like, okay, if I'm leaning here, my head's actually going to tilt the other way because balance, right? If I tilt this way, I'm falling over. So the body's like, okay, you're going to lean there. All right, let me take your neck. Then you go to stand up, and then instead of my head being straight, it's going to be slightly like this. And since the head's here, the eyes are going to turn straight. So you'll look at someone, and they're never going to have necessarily a straight chin and stuff like that. We're always slightly based on our posture. So ideally, and it's weird because we'll change people and like, this feels weird. I'm like, this is your straight. This is why we have people take pictures and send video. Because like, oh, I'm walking straight. I'm like, then we show them the video like, oh my gosh, why is my leg going there? My other leg going here, my head turned like this. Because your body adapts. You see straight, but doesn't mean your body's straight ahead, which is kind of cool to see when you take a picture. You'll see people will be like this. One shoulder's elevated and they're not going to realize it. And so that's how we kind of work on things. So picture and stuff, but in a general sense, tucking down a little bit and back, it may feel like when we do rib work, same thing. I walk, I'm like, all right, I feel hunched over, but this is because I'm so What's up, guys? That's how I used to be. And so just down and back a tad we always work on. And it could be a component if you get the ribs in a better position. The neck muscles actually connect to your rib cage, right? So if your ribs move better, it's gonna loosen the neck muscles. So sometimes it's like the chicken or the egg. Which one do I work on first? But we always know, we always revert back to breathing. Work on your breath, let the down-regulate the system, and then go investigate a little bit more. All right. Thank you guys. Like I said, take a picture of that. Contact us if you need anything. Everything's on there. A lot of good content. We're updating it on a weekly basis for exercises we've done. And thank you very much for having me.